Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here, and welcome to another episode of Spirit Drive, or in this case, it's more like an episode of Spirit Park. So I'm just out here in the beach once again, and I'm going to be talking about, in this video, the discussion of negativity in disguise. Now this is a very important topic, a very big one, and this is kind of why I wanted to park, because I'm not too sure how long this video is going to be. Because there's a lot to cover relating to this particular topic, and it just requires a little more focus rather than me kind of driving around and having kind of spontaneous conversation. So with the topic, the discussion, as it relates to negativity in disguise, it's not so much in the idea of looking at negativity like it's an obvious thing. Our mind is quite clever, even though it's pretty dumb, with not being able to understand love or happiness or joy. It's quite clever. It has psychological tactics to itself. And this is why the mind is so addicting. This is why it's not so easy for many people to follow a path of happiness, because they're still addicts relating to the mind, relating to how seductive it can be. And this is why there is negativity in disguise. And when I'm saying this, it's not to say like I've never touched, anything pertaining to negativity in disguise. I certainly have. In the past, that has certainly been a lot of what I had done as well too. Is that negativity in disguise is the feeling that you're just addicted to judging people, that you're overly critical, that you can be narcissistic, that you can be egocentric, that you can just be angry, you can have anxiety. You can have sadness, right? Feeling upset. All of this, again, is just covered in a blanket within our minds to say, hey, it's okay. It's okay to feel like you have to judge people. It's okay if you have to be overly critical of someone else. So this is why, of course, there is this allure to the mind. It's so heavily addictive. It's so seductive. It's like that temptress or tempter. Right? Saying, hey, it's okay. This person's being a jerk to you. He deserves to get his butt kicked with this verbal jousting. You have to really let him have it. You have to let her have it. They shouldn't be treating you this way. You need to just give it to them hard, right? Just pummel them with this anger, with this hatred, with this frustration, with this egocentric behavior. Get your dopamine injection out. And that's the nature of the negativity in disguise. It's a feel-good, but it's a feel-good as if a drug addict was getting their fix. It's a feel-good as if a smoker was lighting up a cigarette. It's a feel-good as if you were taking another shot of alcohol. It's mental masturbation. It's mind-fapping, right? Getting that dopamine injection, that dopamine hit relating to the negativity. This is why a lot of us don't want to get past the mind. This is why a lot of us don't want to get into happiness, because we're addicts. We are addicted to all of the fallacies of the mind, of all of this pleasure, these pleasure hits, whether it's sexual hits, whether it's drug hits, alcohol hits, smoking hits, or judgmental hits, being overly critical, feeling yourself high and mighty, being superior to another person. And like I said, it's not that I'm completely innocent of this. I have certainly had these experiences of feeling high and mighty and feeling superior to people in the past, and I had to realize what I was doing and saying, hey, Brad, you know what? You're being a jerk. You're being very, very judgmental. You're being highly critical to people. And I noticed this, I catch this. And you have to train the mind. You have to kind of train your mind to kind of detect where the mind is screwing up. So it's kind of like the different hemispheres of the mind are one aiding you and the other against you. And so you have to be aware of this. And then you get to the point where you transcend the mind, where you get just full of happiness, full of love, full of joy, where there is no dopamine. There is no fix. There is no addiction to the idea of us getting into this negativity in disguise. It no longer becomes a blanket. You pull the drape off and you see the negativity there. It's the wolf in sheep's clothing. That's the nature of the negativity in disguise. So Brad, how do we surpass it? What do? We have to train ourselves to catch when we are doing this. We have to train ourselves to seize that moment when we feel like we're about to unleash on somebody, when we're feeling a lot of anxiety, when we're feeling a lot of panic, when we're feeling very upset, when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling angry, pertaining to us not getting our way. This is why whenever there's these great concepts about following your bliss, following your happiness, following your joy, the mind doesn't want to let you go. It will not let you go without putting up the greatest fight possible. It will get you to criticize every single thing pertaining to the inner being. It will get you to criticize the nature of happiness and saying, oh yeah, well, if the happiness is so great, why is our world in the way that it is? It's because happiness hasn't really touched the world in that deeper level with people, because there are still people in the majority sense that live off the addiction to mind. They are mind addicts. And that's the majority of the population right now. It's not the other way around, where the majority of the population has truly entered this state of bliss, of happiness, of joy, of love. If that was the case, we'd be seeing a very different world. We would see on a monumentous scale and a very accelerated scale the dismantling of anything that represents pollution, that pertains to harm, even our vocal pollution, our voice pollution, our thought pollution, all different types of pollutions and contaminations and toxicities. All of that would be dissolved extremely quickly, and you would see something incredible unfolding on the collective scale. And that is happening, but it's happening on a very gradual level. But this again is why whenever I start talking about going into your happiness, going into your joy, going into your love, and also mentioning techniques, free techniques like the BCR technique and the TC technique. Well, if this was so easily received by the mind, many of us would be doing the BCR technique, would be waking up with a smile on our face, so unbelievably happy that we have no problem clearing away these triggers whatsoever. That's not the case. The mind is seductive. The mind is a drug. It is the greatest drug that has ever been devised. Okay? It's greater than cocaine, greater than heroin, greater than all of these other particular drugs out there. This mind is so addictive that it makes you feel so good because you don't have to take any external substance. In its own make, the mind will keep you at bay. It'll keep you in its grasp. It'll keep you in its clutches because it wants you to judge people. It wants you to ridicule them. It wants you to fight them. Fight. Why? Because this is all psychological process that we've all grown up with at the youngest of ages. And it grows and it ferments and it's like a virus. And it not only affects us physically, not only affects us emotionally, it affects us mentally. So the physical, mental, and emotional bodies become heavily contaminated with this devious psychological process of what we're taught in our youth. The person's out of hand, you gotta give them a good smack. Make sure they're coming back to reality here. Hey, snap out of it. Stop being a wuss. Stop being this. Stop being that. Ego. Is that we are trained and taught how to respond in the most unnatural ways possible. So it is the entire programming relating to lack that has caused the mind to spiral out of control. We have been taught, we have been raised to think that it's absolutely okay to put a person in their place. If they're out of line, give them a good smack, right? Give them a good verbal jousting. Ridicule them, belittle them, make them feel like they're absolute crap. Be completely judgmental to them. Let it out. And that's exactly what we do, right? Our parents tell us this, teachers tell us this, friends tell us this, all the educational systems, technological systems, science, logic, everything you do always comes together with the aspect of some type of ego-based retort. If you're saying something against science, well, you have the scientific community bashing you to bits. You say something against education, you have the educational community bashing you to bits. You say something out of turn pertaining to your parental upbringing. Parents can bash you to bits. Siblings can bash you to bits. Other relatives can bash you to bits. You're not following what's trendy or what's cool in the friend circles. Friends will bash you to bits, right? And it goes on and on and on. It is the aspect of cruelty in disguise. We don't know that we're doing it. And that is one of the very first steps you have to do. You have to catch yourself when you're feeling that you're about to judge a person, you're about to criticize them, because it just feels so good. It's just that empty, hollow pleasure that we get from the mind, saying, hey, this guy stepped out of line, you bash him to bits. You tear them apart, you tear them limb from limb. This person's doing something horrible, let's hang him, let's shoot him, let's do something horrifying, because that's what's going to make it all better. You guys don't realize that when you're thinking that you want to hang somebody or kill somebody because they've done horrible things, there's going to be another person coming along doing something even worse. It's not the idea, right? But through the mind, we create that impression. We think that the most justified aspect is to retaliate, is to light up a big inferno and meet it with another inferno, right? It's stupidity, but it's a psychological process. We feel that we're in the right because we're criticizing, because we're judging, because we're putting so much egocentric behavior towards all these things that we cannot agree with these things where we become disgusted, right? The idea of being disgusted is an unnatural process, right? I'm not saying that if you're seeing a person, set arson to there, that you're not going to do something about it. But to the point where it's just blatant disgust on such an overage where all you want to do is be constantly judgmental. There's no action, there's no solution towards it. It's just the idea of being disgusted for disgustedness' sake. And that's a trap, right? And that's the nature of these blankets of negativity in disguise. There's no solution to them. It's just the idea of having this sudden burst of anger, sudden burst of hatred, this sudden burst of disgust, this sudden burst of judgment. All of it just starts coming full circle. And you don't develop solutions for it. You don't resolve it. You just let it process. You let it spin like a hamster running on a wheel. So if we are to transcend this negativity in disguise, we have to catch ourselves. We want to be in that state where we can be receptive to the mind and saying, hey, I catch that. It's like you're looking in the field. You're looking for the wolf in sheep's clothing, or rather wolves in sheep's clothing. And you catch it. Say, hey, I got you. All right, you pull off the blanket. There's the wolf. The wolf runs away. It's caught in the act. Well, that's what you have to do with your mind. You got to catch it. You got to train yourself to catch it. And that comes through subtle energy. That comes through subtle focus. That comes from awareness. That comes from relaxing the mind, clearing the mind, meditation. That comes from bringing more love energy into yourself, more joy, actually respecting yourself, respecting who you are, even respecting the mind. Because if all we do is want to wage war on the mind, fight the mind, you'll never win it. You have to transcend it by making peace with it. And that comes through your own happiness, your own love, your own joy. And as you build that up a lot more, you become more subtly aware of when these wolves in sheep's clothing appear. Because it's not a subtle vibration. It's like a blip on the radar. You got to catch that blip. So if you are in a state of love, in a state of happiness, in a state of clear mind, where you feel clarity, you're like this sine wave that is completely subtle. And you notice that little blip. Hey, wait, this person, oh, I catch myself, right? And that happens to me still at times. I'll look at something and so, oh, what the heck? And I get that little blip and I got to catch it, right? So we are training ourselves to look for that blip. It's not something like this. It's like that. And that's it. It's like a fluctuation in a heartbeat, a heart murmur in that way. And then it goes back and it becomes steady. So you are catching that. You're catching that little blip on the radar and say, hey, I saw that. I saw you, mind. I know what you're doing, right? And as soon as you catch it, well, that's a trigger. We're clearing the trigger, just like we do with the TC technique, right? So BCR technique fills us with love. We stay in that love for as long as we possibly can. If you can only stay in it for a minute or two, that's fine. Recenter yourself, bring more love back into yourself, and continue with that flow. And the more that you do this, you're going to get used to clarity. You're going to get used to the subtle energies, and you'll know when there's a blip on the radar. You'll know when to catch it, and now you're clearing away that trigger. What you're doing in the meantime is you're working to be as happy and as loving and as joyful as possible. That's the antidote to a very critical mind. That is the antidote to a fragile mind. That is the antidote to an addicted mind, right? Who's addicted to these things. So again, this is the whole key. This is what masters have been teaching, attempting to teach us for thousands and thousands of years, is to center the mind, focus the mind, bring it into subtle energy, bring it into love. See it as that subtle line, like that subtle wave on the ocean that all of a sudden turns into a tidal wave really quickly and then tries to go back. You want to catch that. So as soon as you catch that, now you got a trigger to dissolve. And you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. Yes, guys, it's repetition. It is constant repetition relating to the clearing of the mind, to clearing away those blankets that are covering up the negativity. But the more that you do this every single day, within a matter of several weeks, several months, depending on how well you do this, you will actually have a clear mind, no longer wanting those dopamine injections. You will want a clear mind that is not an addict anymore, which means you're a recovering mental addict. We're a recovering emotional addict. We're a recovering physical addict. So this again is what we are learning through having a subtle mind, bringing love, being compassionate, being joyful, being harmonious, being happy. That is moving it into that subtle vibration and catching those blips on the radar and shifting it. So this is why the negativity is always in a state of disguise. If it was so blatant, we would have no problem catching it whatsoever. But it won't do that. It's deeply psychological. So many psychological systems on this planet are devious. It's not just some obvious thing that pops up. No. Those that have created these aspects of psychological operations, these psyops, are very clever. They're very clever. They're very cunning, right? They know how the mind works, and so they will embed that into our common systems. They will embed that into our behaviors. They will embed that into our learning. All of it will be embedded with these psychological triggers that say, hey, it's okay to be angry at a person. It's okay to blow your top at somebody because you want that fix. You want that judgmentalness. And we just see it throughout everywhere. We see it in our politics. We see it in our government. We see it in our education. We see it in our technology. We see it in our religion. It goes on and on and on. Endlessly. So you are the one that has the ability to remove the poison of the addictive mind. And that comes with love, with happiness, with joy, to be subtle and to catch those blips on the radar. And when you do that, you will be able to uncover the cleverness. You'll be able to uncover that blanket of disguise pertaining to negativity existing within an addictive mind. Thank you very much for checking out my channel. Below you'll see my links to social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also go to healingcodecards.com, pick up your own Healing Code Cards body deck, and of course check out my website at newearthteachings.com. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next video.